This episode of the podcast has been brought to you by Sweet Cheetah Publicity. Sweet Cheetah is an inclusive, socially conscious PR collective that puts their money where their mouth is. They have a current roster of bands that reads like a greatest hits anthology. Brainiac, Catholic School, Jawbox, The New Amsterdams, Oceans in the Sky. I mean, the list goes on and on. They also do PR for record labels such as A La Carte, Arctic Rodeo, Steadfast, Rad Girlfriend, and so many more. How do they pay it forward? How do they put their money where their mouth is? By generating thousands of dollars in annual charitable donations to the likes of Women in Vinyl, Coalition of Communities of Color, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and many, many more. The man has the receipts. I've seen them. It is real. The artists, labels, and podcasts Sweet Cheetah works with are curated with an eye on working primarily with friends. You could find Sweet Cheetah on all of the social media platforms, be it Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just look for Sweet Cheetah PR, and they will be there. He's been Tim, I've been Peter, and Sweet Cheetah has been beautiful. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. I am your host, Peter, and I am still here. Tonight on the show, we are doing a special Grammys episode. We're joined by Charlie, Faye and Adrienne Lake, who've joined together to launch a new Austin-based creative services agency for music organizations and musicians called Daydream Believer. Since Adrienne is attending the Grammys, we will be dubbing this the Grammys episode. Do we talk about the Grammys? For a couple seconds. It's just a catchy tagline, people. Don't get married to it. To celebrate their new business and to provide a free educational opportunity for artists, they have teamed up with Austin Music Foundation to present a panel and mixer on team building for musicians. That is Thursday, February 9th, and the panel is entitled Building Your Team, Building Your Music Career. As always, I'm glad you're all here with me. I'm glad I can provide this content for you, but it doesn't get done for free. I don't want to pander. But you know, all of what I bring to you, it costs money, right? So if you wish to donate, we take donations via PayPal, Venmo, wherever you want to donate. Could be $1, could be $5. If you really want to get involved, if you want to make an impact on it, if you want the compilation album that I'm dropping, if you want extra episodes every month, think about subscribing via my streaming platform, Red Circle. You could donate on the monthly or yearly, and you'll be privy to an episode a month. You'll be privy to the compilation, a store, a secret store just for you that I'm building currently. I'm really excited about the opportunity to bring this to you. But I can't do it without your help. So listen, even if you don't want to financially help me out, like, subscribe, rate, review, wherever you're listening to this. And go to my socials, Facebook or Instagram, and like and follow me there and share my posts. That means so much to me. And I thank you for supporting me so far. I had a great conversation with these two. They know more about music than almost anyone, and they know the business of it better than I ever will. They are a resource. They are consummate professionals, and they are a lot of fun to speak with. This conversation with the two of them lasted an hour and a half. But then Adrienne and I really got into it. And the conversation went on well past the interview because the two of us had so much in common and had so much fun talking to one another. It was great. It was phenomenal. You're not going to get all of it. We do get into some things that I'm not comfortable sharing. Well, that's not true. I just don't want to oversaturate the episode with anecdotes that aren't specifically tailored to what this is supposed to be about. So we did a little editing. We shortened things up a little bit and brought you the real meat of the conversation. And I really hope you enjoy it. Now, I know I have a tendency to ramble on, so without further ado, I give to you, Charlie and Adrienne, Daydream Believer, on the book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast.
Yes, I am Adrienne Lake, and I give permission for you to use my recording and likeness.
Wonderful.
Yep, I'm Charlie Faye, and I give you permission to use my recording and likeness.
And also for, just the sake of being decent human beings, can we announce our pronouns just so I don't make a mistake?
Sure. Yeah, we're both she, her.
Okay. I'm also one of the cisgendered, boring, Caucasian
snoozer.
Yeah. I'm the reason why the world sucks for 90% of the population, or people who look like me. Actually, I don't ascribe to the belief system that
it can't all be your fault.
It couldn't possibly be. So I hear that you are both heading to the Grammys.
Oh,
not me, just Adrienne.
Oh, just yeah. Adrienne. Okay.
Yeah, I am. I'm heading there with my artist Caleb DeCasper and the head of his label, which is Chicken Ranch. And he was kind of in the early nominations, but this is his first album, so we didn't expect it to make it to the second round. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm a member of the Recording Academy, which is really cool. They have a really cool mentorship program, which I've been enjoying. I get matched with these really cool kids that are so knowledgeable. It's a little frightening. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so one of Caleb's goals is to get a Grammy, and he also just wants to know what it's all about. And I used to live in LA, and I almost went to the Grammys one year, but I've never been. So we just decided let's just do it and go and meet people and have fun. And I can't believe Caleb's never been to LA. That's so nuts to me.
Oh, wow.
He lived in New York for a while, and he's never been to LA. And I think he's going to love it, and LA's going to love him.
I would argue that New York's cooler, but that's my own opinion. I lived there for many years. I went to NYU. That was my...
Oh, nice.
That's where I spent my early 90s.
Charlie,
I grew up right in the NYU neighborhood too. So I was there in the early 90s as well.
So I got to, kind of cut my teeth on not only the hardcore scene at that time, but Stretch and Bobbito on the radio, and just the cultural epicenter of the planet Earth at that point was occurring simultaneously there, Los Angeles and Seattle, Washington. as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think LA has kind of taken over almost, as New York has become, I don't know, that layer of muck that I loved so much and found endearing. Like Bleecker Bob's isn't really Bleecker Bob's anymore.
Yeah, it's an affordability issue. I mean, artists definitely can't live in Manhattan anymore. They can't live in the same neighborhoods of Brooklyn that they lived in 10 years ago. And everybody has gotten pushed so far out at this point that there really is no, it's hard to have that sense of community when you're living in the stretches of all the boroughs, you know? And I think LA maybe has, I don't know, maybe it's been easier for musicians in LA because things just pushed more in one direction. So everybody's on the east side now, you know.
Which is pretty expensive, actually.
Yeah.
But there are still affordable places in LA. You know, is it more expensive than other places? Yeah, absolutely. But there's always some place. I mean, I found this place in Silver Lake, Los Feliz, like right on the border. Just the most desirable location in the world. I could walk to that Trader Joe's on a Hyperion in Griffith Park, and it was incredible. And I got an amazing deal because the property manager just loved me and became the gay grandfather that I always wanted. And so there are places out there, and everybody's used to commuting there. So yeah, you can live in Downey for really cheap and then, you know, come into town whenever you need to, or whatever it is. So it's still easier in LA, but
Austin's much easier.
Austin, that's a town. I mean, every time I've been to South by Southwest with my best friends are in the band in Albatross. We all grew up together, and they've played South by Southwest many times. Going to Austin at that point, I understand, is not really Austin.
Okay? Right. It's a little crazy.
It's a little crazy, A, and B, people are kind of putting on their best face. But from what I understand, like, Austin truly is as cool as I'd perceived it to be. Music wise, cultural, from a cultural standpoint, from just a communal standpoint, from what I understand, it truly is pretty fantastic.
I think the community piece of it is really big too, and sets us apart from other music cities, because not only are there a lot of great musicians here and great artists, but everyone really is supportive of each other. There's not that competitive spirit. It's really, everybody's happy for somebody when they're doing well, you know, everybody's trying to help each other. And I don't know that any other town really has that.
You know, I'm originally from Tucson, and I love Tucson to death. But it was so refreshing to come here and be in a place where everybody is so proud of their sons and daughters that go on and do great things, where everybody in Tucson just seemed like they were jealous.
Same with Scranton, Pennsylvania. I can tell you with a great degree of certainty, there's a lot of jealousy, a lot of backbiting, a lot of gatekeeping. And I've posited this to many artists that I've had on recently. It seems to me that this generation that are far removed from, I could be their father legitimately at this point. These kids, be it punk rock, hardcore, be it, you know, the whole post-punk revival, which I'm really appreciating right now. The gatekeepy, hard-nosed nonsense that occurred in the 90s, 2000, early 2000s even, doesn't seem to really resonate in the same way. Ergo, creating a more fertile nest for creativity and inclusivity. I feel like the culture is in great hands with these younger people.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about, because I mean, the scene that you are in, like a lot of the artists that you've interviewed are artists that played at the very first music job I had, which was working at a place called the Downtown Performance Center in Tucson. So Jawbox, Jawbreaker, Neurosis, all those bands like the Jazz June. I saw them all when I was in high school or afterwards when I was working there. And now I think 100% you're right. All you have to do is go to an Idols show, and you will see so much love and so much acceptance and so much, pulling people off the ground. And, when they get so excited, they just fall down.
It reminds me of the late 80s in that regard, because right when I'd kind of found my way to hardcore via the very small town I'm from, we had a pretty great little hardcore punk scene. We all went to see 7 Seconds play at this arcade that was right on the street from my house. I was probably 12 going on 13. And the big burly skinheads were picking me up off the ground when I was getting the snot knocked out of me in the mosh pit. I was just getting back up and going for it because I was full of vim and vinegar, at that point in my life. That died, of course, as all things do. But it seems to me that that kind of spirit has taken a really deep root at this point now. Musically as well, there's just the boundaries are blown wide open. So who for you is really resonating in that regard? Like when you think about how, there's really no codified scene orientation now, what bands are really ringing that bell for you, making that bubble up?
Oh my God, how much time do you have? I listen to music 10 hours a day. I would, just off the top of my head, the one I just mentioned, Idols, I mean, of course, they kind of got really popular during the pandemic when we needed that. We needed that so bad. And I remember all during the pandemic when, we're so used to in Austin, a steady diet of shows, and we didn't have any of that except for live streams and lame. And then they came and, after things opened up and everybody was losing their minds in the sweetest, kindest way. And it's just so good to see that and see these people making all these great stands on feminism and racism and look out for each other and love each other. I think they're a great example. Now I have these post-punk roots like you do. Charlie came from kind of a different place. So let us know what you think.
Well, I always get a little nervous when somebody asks about new bands that I've been to, because I'm a little bit, all of my favorite stuff is from the 60s and 70s. And that's the stuff that I'm into. Interestingly, though, so you have a kid too, right?
I have a 20-something-year-old child and a 3-year-old child.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I have a 3-year-old as well. So, we listen to a lot of that stuff together, a lot of Motown. Also, she's really into Paul Simon right now. So we're on a big Paul Simon kick. And I've started also to dig into the world of kids music. And there's some stuff that's, but I've found some stuff that's actually really cool. Have you heard Casper Baby Pants?
Yes, often.
Do you love Ants Can't Dance?
Yes. I actually
butter.
I love it all. Boom, big love it all.
The guy's a genius.
Yes.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh my God, this guy has
4 legs.
Yeah. It's the coolest. It's the guy who I think was the leader of the presidents of the United States of America.
Yes. Yep.
And he is he's a genius songwriter and producer too, produces all his own stuff. And most kids' music is so this guy, it's really well produced, it's really smart. And
It
it's
doesn't
so
pander
fun.
to the kids.
No, he doesn't, but he knows how to connect with them. So that's basically, I'm listening to Paul Simon and Casper Baby Pants right now.
I just listened to Graceland, stem to stern, twice in a row on my on a little trip I had taken 2 weeks ago. Paul Simon and Garfunkel. My dad used to sing those songs to me, trying to put me to sleep. So I have a very special kind of place in my heart for Simon and Garfunkel. But my all-time favorite band ever is from the 70s, T-Rex. So you say 60s and 70s. Mark Bolan is my idol.
Look at this. Wait, there it is. There's Mark Bolan right there on my wall. I guess you can't really see him.
I do have a man crush on Mark Bolan. I always have. I always will.
Me too.
There's just something inherently sexy about T-Rex's music, about Mark Bolan. I have all the DVDs of them.
Magical.
Very, very much so. But he's it. I draw the line at Mark Bolan. And he's dead, so it'll never happen.
So sad.
Yeah.
I did get to meet his son when I lived in
Roland,
LA.
I met Roland as well.
Yeah.
I went to
Everybody meets Roland at some point.
He's pretty amazing, and he is as talented as his father, I would argue.
I haven't heard his music. Is he putting anything out?
He'll let things fly on YouTube occasionally. He doesn't release albums. He hasn't done anything in I can't tell you how long, but he truly is as talented as his father. It's a shame he doesn't do anything, but does he really need to?
I guess not. I mean, when I met him, it was at a rooftop party in Koreatown, and he was just walking around strumming the guitar and acting like he was the only one there. It was great.
So I have to ask, what was kind of the impetus of the formation of your conglomerate here?
Well, it's a really interesting kind of serendipitous story, which I can start out, and Charlie, you can jump in whenever you want.
Sure.
But essentially, since I moved to Austin, 12 years ago, I've been a talent buyer, and I took a job at South by Southwest as a music festival programmer in October 2019. And, worked my butt off putting together a whole bunch of really cool programming, which never came to fruition. And, that was kind of like the first huge red flag was, I was in charge of Italy, and all my fellow programmers are talking about all their overseas bands are dropping, and we thought, oh, they're just being, careful, and then it just steamrolled. So cut to, March, and we've all been laid off, and there's this really incredible organization called Austin Music Foundation that Charlie and I have both been involved with for a long time. And they reached out and they said, hey, Adrienne, would you like to do artist consultations? And I was like, yeah, heck yeah, what else am I doing? And it was a really interesting time to be doing that, because here in Austin, we have a million venues. So bands are gigging all the time, playing shows. So when that was taken away from them, a lot of them were lost and they were freaking out, and there were a lot of tears, but they really just needed to know what they were doing right, and that this is the time to do all the things you never had time to do before. And I loved it so much. And I remember I was driving back to Austin after visiting my family, thinking about if I was going to take a job offer for a really great company, or did I really, Charlie and I have always wanted to have more autonomy and to fill a niche. And we've talked about this over the years. And as I'm thinking about this, Charlie calls me and she says, well, I've been doing artist consultations and you're doing them too. Maybe we should do them together. And it was this moment. And And that's how it all happened. It was very natural and organic. And I asked Austin Music Foundation if it was okay if I started doing that, because artists started asking, hey, can you help me with this? And AMF said, absolutely, and here's a client. And so it all just happened really naturally. What was your perspective, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear you tell it, from your path to it. Well, for me, I mean, I was an artist and a touring artist. And then in November of 2019, I had a baby. And then when that baby was 4 months old, I was about to make my comeback at South by, official showcasing artist. 4 months old, I'm back to it. And obviously that did not happen. The South by that never was. And then basically, I mean, that first year or so of the pandemic, I was just parenting in a vacuum, as I'm guessing you were too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that was hard. That took everything. But as, my daughter started to get a little bit older, and as, things got a little looser again, and I was able to have a little more help, I started thinking about, what do I want to do now? Do I want to go back to performing? I'm not quite there yet. Still doesn't feel safe. Also going to bed at, 8:00 at night. So, and then I thought about maybe
right now, by the way.
Yeah, which I still do. And I thought about maybe going back to school, but I had always done consulting for artists kind of as a side hustle. And I've always been that, the one of my friends who all the friends come to, like, can we sit down and talk through, like, how am I going to release this record? Or, and so I'd been doing that for a while, but never really tried to make it a thing because I was doing other things. And then as I was thinking, well, do I want to go back to school, become a therapist, or do I want to try to stay in music somehow, without being out there performing right now? And I decided I really want to stay in. I want to stay in music. I love my life in music. I love all the people I know in music, and I don't want to drop out. So I started to think about, well, could this consulting thing be a viable business? And my thought was probably not on its own, because artists don't have a lot of extra money to spend, and they're not going to spend it on consulting, which is not a thing that they've been told they need.
Yeah.
So my thought was, well, what will they spend money on? Well, they all want to spend money on publicity. Okay, great. Can I package those two things together in a way where I'm giving them the thing that they think they need, but I'm also giving them the thing that they really need?
Yeah.
Yes, I can. Who else is doing those two things? Adrienne is. So I called Adrienne, and there you go.
I mean, it seems to me that the need for what you're providing is pretty vast. I mean, artists, I'm a musician myself. I'm a former touring musician myself. I don't have the wherewithal to sell anything. It's not in me. I'm an artist. I'm not a salesman. And I've programmed myself to think that as a plumber, I can tell someone very easily, okay, you owe me this. This is parts. This is labor. I can lay it right out. Insofar as, going to play, how much it's going to take for me to, put something out, make merch, things of that nature. I'm sure my blonde roots start to show. Okay. I don't know if that has to do with a lifetime of substance abuse on my part or what have you, but
I think it's so
common.
common. It is the norm. It's
Yeah.
the norm among artists. Yeah.
In this day and age, though, younger artists are a lot more computer savvy than, folks our age. And they've kind of learned this online marketing stuff. And some of them are real naturals at it, but, writing their own bio, an elevator pitch, that kind of thing doesn't come naturally. And you still, of all ages, run into artists who don't know how to sell themselves. And I get that, if you're focused on music, you don't want to think about it that way, and you need help then.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that as musicians, we tend to believe that the art we create is the resonance that we're putting out into the world. This is what I'm capable of. Everything else, it's not really me. And it's not true. A lot of that has to do with self-doubt. Some of it has to do with romanticizing the ideal of what it is to be a rock star or whatever. But the fact that, you, Charlie, you come from both sides of that fence, I find that very refreshing, because I know I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? I know I don't have the personality to do that. I'm very blunt. Like, you don't like me? All right, fuck you. Goodbye. Yeah, well, asshole, more like. So, I find that very refreshing. Well, like, what is your background in music, though? Like, what made you start playing, for example?
I mean, it's kind of tough to know where to start, because I loved music from, when I was really little. I mean, and I loved the same stuff that I love now. Like, I loved, I hate to say it, but do you know the Dirty Dancing soundtrack?
Of course. She's like the wind.
Well, that was a terrible one. But most of it is like, it's like Solomon Burke and Otis Redding and like all these great artists, from the 60s. And that's, oh no, did I lose my connection?
No, I can hear you just fine.
It said, now it's telling me I lost my connection. I can't see you guys, but that's okay. I'll keep talking. So yeah, I mean, I got really into that kind of music when I was little, and also became obsessed with Carole King, to the point where Tapestry. Tapestry. Like, I had that tape in my Walkman, and I would sing along to it on car rides and annoy my brother. And I would like make her little presents and send them to her, which, I mean, who knows if her management or whatever office is receiving these homemade gifts from a 7-year-old. But yeah, so I was really into music.
Oh no, we did lose her.
Yeah, that was an actual threat. So I guess in turn, what's your aha moment, I guess, then, with your obsession with music?
Okay.
She's back.
Sorry, guys. I don't know what happened.
Adrienne, we'll save that for when Charlie's done then. Okay.
Yeah. Pick up where you left off.
Where did I leave off? Where did you lose me?
You were sending Carole King things in the mail, voodoo dolls, stuff like that.
I did that. But I didn't start playing music until way later, like really until I was in high school. And my brother actually is a great guitar player, and he was like, you know what, I need a bass player. And I was like, cool, I'll be the bass player. He was like, you know what, I need a drummer. I was like, cool, yeah, I'll be the drummer. And so I just dabbled in different instruments, and then didn't really start playing seriously or trying to make anything happen with it until I was in my 20s. So I'd consider myself to be kind of a late bloomer playing music. And I don't know, as far as having the business side too, like I know that is kind of a rare thing to have, the artist side and the business side and be kind of balanced in both. I feel like most people are really one or really the other. And I'm not exactly sure why. Other than that I came to Austin from New York and everyone was like, wow, you really have it together. And I was like, are you sure I'm not just like coming from a different culture and it looks that way? I don't know.
I think everybody on the East Coast is inherently a hustler to some degree. But as I'd said, being a musician, poet, goofball from when I'm from, I just don't have that business acumen or the personality or the charm or whatever to sell myself. I couldn't sell ice to someone dying of thirst in the Sahara. It's just not it's not
it's
in me.
really hard, and that really is, I think, like 95% of artists. It's weird to find somebody who's comfortable with it, and I don't know. I mean, for me, it's not like any kind of like ego, not like you're saying that it is, but it's not an ego thing where I'm like, I'm so great. Like,
No.
it's, I know you're not saying that. I think maybe there's just maybe there's more of a separation for me or like a comfort level with like, I don't feel like the thing that I'm putting out there is me. It is, I've made it, but it's not, there's some separation there for me. It's something that I've created, but it's not. Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting. I I kind of get what you're saying though. Like when I create something, I know it's a part of me, but I don't see it as like this be all end all slice of my soul. I really don't. I understand that it's just words and music that are put together in such a way for it to be palatable enough for someone to want to listen to it. Verse, chorus, verse, things of that nature. Do I put everything I am into it? Yes. But at the end of the day, it's not who I am. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
It's a part of who you are.
it's a part of who I am. But
Yeah.
like I think I'm not looking at it through the same eyes than I would have been looking at it 20 some odd years ago because
Sure.
I wasn't a father. Now I think my identity is more wrapped up in my wife and my children.
It's also such a different landscape than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I mean,
Music.
back then I thought I was screaming into the infinite trying to contact the divine and let them know that they can go fuck themselves. Like there was really that part of me that was so dissatisfied, and I'm just not anymore. And I think that actually makes for better writing, for a better presentation. It makes things more succinct, more relatable. There's that capricious youth like vehemence that kind of comes through specifically in punk rock that allows you to be abrasive without care or distinction. Now, yeah, I'm a different human, but coming from your background specifically, Charlie, it's not of that punk thing. Like you're writing from a different bent.
Yeah, it's very earnest.
Yeah.
And I thought of another thing that maybe makes my thinking about this stuff a little bit different, which is I see like all of these things as part of the creative process, not just the making of the music. So like the photo shoot, definitely part of the creative process, and the graphic design, those things are, clearly seem more like art. But then like the planning, like the telling the story behind the record, that's creative too. And what are you going to do with it that makes it stand out? Like it's all part of the creative process for me. And just trying to think outside the box with the way you release a record, you know, to set things apart, you know, from all the other noise. And, you know, brings us back to the consulting piece. Like, we really try to help our artists stand out, because, you know, guy makes record isn't a story.
Yeah, that's really just dime a dozen.
Or a story. Yeah, and a lot of artists can't see their own story, and sometimes you can't either until you sit down with them for an hour and ask them a bunch of questions. And that's happened a lot when I've written bios. You know, I say, you know, what's interesting, what's different about you, and they're like, I don't know. And then you have to really get into it and draw it out, and then you find out there's a really interesting story, and there almost always is. And it's, when you're that deep in it, it's hard to see it.
So you have to be a forensic pathologist on top of everything else that you're doing for these artists.
Only for some folks, not for everyone.
Well, okay. and we all need somebody to help us see the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
You know, even we do, like, we can do that for each other. It's hard to do it for yourself.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's all due to perspective, but, you know, I kind of want to turn it back to Adrienne. Like, what is that aha moment for you? You know, that song, album, artist.
I can tell you exactly what it is, and those records are right over there. One of them was Michael Jackson, Off the Wall. Fell in love with that when I was like 4 years old, and it got very viscerally into music, you know, looking at the album artwork, reading all the lyrics, and just like wanting to know everything that I could. And I was like, oh my gosh, Stevie Wonder was on this album. Who's Rod Temperton? You know, who's Quincy Jones? And I was asking these questions when I was 4 years old. And then the other one that I was obsessed with was Elvis. And I started going through all of the couch cushions and getting all the quarters and taking those and buying not candy, but 7-inch records. Some of it was pretty schlocky, like REO Speedwagon and Air Supply. But
we're all guilty of it.
A lot of the stuff that, you know, I just fell in love with back then, I still love. And just having those memories of me and my sister roller skating in the basement to Blondie, you know.
Yes.
I just got obsessed at a very early age. My mom would catch me just sitting in front of the radio, staring at it and listening intently. And then when I got into junior high, I got extremely music obsessed. And I was going to school in a kind of upper middle class area where, again, and it was the times, if you like goth and punk rock music, then you're a freak and you're, you know, treated like a freak.
Yep.
And I gave up trying to fit in and just kind of wore my Pure shirts and trench coats and whatnot. And then found a like-minded tribe in high school and went to a really cool artsy-fartsy private school for a year. And everybody was encouraged to be creative and do whatever they wanted. And that was a beautiful thing. And when I was in high school, I started hanging out at this all-ages club venue called the Downtown Performance Center, like I mentioned. And I didn't care who was playing. My friends didn't even bother to check and see who was playing. We would go there every night we were allowed to go.
You just go. Yep.
Yeah, and you make all the discoveries and you buy the records. And I was there so much because my mom was very overprotective, and it was the only place where an adult would answer the phone and say, oh yeah, I'm here, I look out for the kids. Bless your heart, Stephen I, who's still doing it. And he eventually gave me a job, and I was making posters. We lost Charlie again.
Oh, wow.
I was making posters back in the old school punk style, where I was, you know, taking old Life magazines and photocopying things until they were distorted and cutting out all the letters and everything. And I still have like a an artist portfolio full of those. And eventually I started like working the door and then getting the band what they wanted. And I remember, oh God, Jesus Lizard. Whew,
Oh,
they
my
were
goodness.
fun. And all the good bands at that time were coming through. Everybody from, I remember there was a lineup. It was Soul Coughing, Shudder to Think, and Sunny Day Real Estate. And
I saw that tour. I saw that
losing
tour.
our minds. Holy crap, that was amazing. And I was
saw
just
that
in heaven every day, you know, going there and hanging out and then working there. I was just in awe. And yeah, and the crowd that I ran with, they were all doing like hardcore post-punk garage rock, that kind of thing. And I just kept at it. I went to the university and I was a media arts major. And I worked in advertising for a little bit, but I was always doing music stuff on the side. And then eventually I moved to Los Angeles and got a job as an A&R assistant at Giant Records. And it was an interesting label. They put out some really great stuff, like
Morbid Angel.
Really?
Yeah, they put
I
out.
don't remember that being on the roster, but that one
They
surprised
put
me.
out Morbid Angel Covenant and Morbid Angel Domination.
Wow, it's demented.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they put out some cool stuff. They put out like a Cramps album, but they would also put out other not as great stuff. But
Sure.
I had a really great boss there who was very well known in the industry, Jeff Aldrich. And once I worked with him, it was just easy to get in other places. So I had a really cool job at Capitol Records where I watched the Jimmy Eat World records sit there in a bin, and
Static Prevails.
so angry. I was so angry at how they treated Jimmy Eat World, and
Yeah.
And then I got a job at DreamWorks working for the head of business and legal, Richard Lair, who I think I might be visiting next week in LA. And he was so kind to me, and I was already kind of unofficially scouting for one of the A&R reps. And he helped me get a junior A&R gig with Luke Wood. And there I got to work with Jimmy Eat World, who are from Arizona, so full circle, and Elliott Smith and AFI. And I got to do a lot of scouting, and I got to go and, David Geffen's office would send me to go check out whoever, and I would send them a report the next day. And I think, on one hand, I was really lucky, but on the other hand, I think I was kind of unique at the time. A lot of people thought that, I was this adorable little indie rocker kid who believed in integrity and, respecting the artist. And, I got mocked for that, but a lot of people thought it was really cool. And I ended up getting a lot of great opportunities because of that. And I really loved my time there, but I also knew that there was one day where I was going to want to get out. And I kind of told myself, when you stop laughing at it, it's time to get out. So I was there for like 5.5 years, and I ended up leaving, and the plan was to come to Austin, but I made a pit stop in Tucson that landed a few years. It ended up being a while, because my favorite club in the World Club Congress gave me a booking job. And then Arizona Daily Star let me write for them, and they let me write about whatever I wanted. So I'd go to Coachella, and I'd go to South by Southwest. And one time I went to New York and, covered Calexico playing there or whatever. And, one of my first interviews was my buddy Mike Davis from MC5.
Yes.
And a lot of this stuff, I mean, almost all of it, I just kind of brought in myself. And once in a while, they'd say, hey, do you want to interview John Doe? Do you want to interview, most of the time they would ask me because they knew that I wanted to interview Peaches. And every once in a while, they'd send something my way that they knew would be a little bit more of a challenge. But that was amazing too. And I lasted through a whole bunch of layoffs somehow. And then eventually came out to Austin, where nobody really cared what I had done before at that time. So it was kind of like starting over, which was humbling, but essentially not a bad thing. So I got into talent buying, and here I am.
I think Austin caught on pretty quick to what you had to offer.
I think Austin is just the sort of place where people with talent and vision have a place, though. It seems to be, anyway.
I think creativity is very much rewarded here, which I love. And not just in music, you know, in businesses, restaurants, whatever. They love that here, which is great.
I mean, tech even has found a place in Austin, which it's very interesting to see. You know, a town that, you know, was never really looked down upon, but, you know, seen as kind of like the sister city to the big towns in Texas, like Houston. You know, people don't automatically go to Austin when they think of like the big sprawling metropolises of the state. You know what I mean?
Well, they're probably thinking of 90s Austin, when it was really Slackerville and it just happened to be the capital of the state. But I started coming out here in the 90s and just fell in love with it for all of its down to earth freakiness. It was beautiful, and it has changed so much, and people complain about it all the time, but it's still a great place to live, especially if you love music and dogs. And
it's interesting too when you think about, like, not only just like indie rock or punk or whatever, but like even hip hop has a very specific and very large place in Texas, where when you think about like Rap-A-Lot Records and you know, the Ghetto Boys and Gangsta Nip and people like that, there's such a rich history there, from, you know, country and western music all the way through.
These days we have a little bit of everything. It's gotten so much more diverse, and it's funny you mentioned the Ghetto Boys. I booked a show, and Sylvain was on it, and I think I had Harmar Superstar on it, and Bushwick Bill showed up unannounced and just like went off on stage, and it was just one of those great Austin moments, you know.
Was it Christian era Bushwick Bill by any chance?
No. No.
Okay.
This was probably like 2015, maybe.
Okay, so he was over it at that point. All right.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Bushwick Bill.
Rest in peace, Bushwick Bill. But he did go through a pretty sizable pro-Christ era, which I found very interesting, specifically considering, you know, the sex and violence of the Ghetto Boys, especially from the mouth of the diminutive Bushwick Bill. God bless his soul.
Only in stature.
Only in stature. I mean, the man was on the cover of an album with a bullet in his eye from the mother of his children.
Yeah.
That he may or may not have deserved. I'm thinking more on the side of may.
Charlie, when did you move here? I don't think I ever asked you.
I moved here in 2007.
Oh, right. Actually,
yeah,
we were talking about that. Yeah, she beat me.
And what was the initial draw for you, Charlie?
Music. I mean, I was in New York. I had a touring gig as a side person out of New York. I was touring with a guy named Dan Zanes, and that tour ended, and I kind of realized, like, I don't really have any attachments right now. I just lost my job. I just, you know, if I want to leave my little hometown, now would be a good time to do it. And I had met some great people who lived in Austin who I knew would hook me into the music scene here. And so I thought, I'll try Austin. It worked out.
Apparently. So, when we talk about, you know, kind of the things from the past and the kind of bell ringers of what's happening now, it's always like something we loved back then and someone now, but there's this entire interim between, I would say, for Charlie, the 60s and 70s. For Adrienne, we're probably more 70s, 80s, early 90s, right?
Yeah.
Uh, what was like the teen years for the both of you like, though? You know what I mean? Because there's that aha moment where, okay, Charlie had like Carole King, and for you, Adrienne, there was the, the early influence of the punk rock and hardcore and the goth and all of that. But there's always that like lull in college where you're into things that most people kind of find fleeting. What was kind of carrying you both through that era of your lives?
The college era.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I don't really remember what I was listening to at the beginning of college, but by the end, I had discovered bluegrass music and fingerstyle blues. And that's the stuff that I was really into, my junior, senior year. Huh?
Were you playing it as well?
Yes, I was. I actually was pretty good.
Okay.
And I would go to bluegrass jams weekly. I was a mandolin player. Still have my mandolin. It was really fun. And I think because that kind of music was like structurally simpler, it was kind of an easy way for me to go like, oh wait, I can improvise. I'm just improvising over these 3 chords, but I'm connecting with other musicians this way, going to those jams and like getting to play with people of all ages. That's what happened in college to me.
Well,
and then I guess that kind of segued into Americana.
Who are some of the foundational artists, though, who are kind of like driving that for you? Because like having been the child of hippies and the nephew of hippies, I come from like starting with when Jerry Garcia and the Dead were still doing bluegrass and Americana music, all the way through like, oh God, who was my uncle's favorite modern band? There was oh boy, there were so many, like actually very good bluegrass groups.
Like Del McCoury Band.
That's one, but
Ricky Skaggs.
There was one that was a little more psychedelic in nature. That's like kind of percolating at the back.
New grass.
Yeah, like more new grass stuff. Like, oh boy, when I remember it, I'll spit it out. But there are so many of those types of groups that kind of led me into the juxtaposition of being a punk rocker and still liking all of that stuff, where people like Primus made sense to me still, and because Les Claypool is obviously a child of both schools, right? Like the metal and the punk thing, and being more from the hippie side of things as well. But college was the right place for this, right? Where you could kind of like slough off the codified nature of what you'd come from and be like, I like punk and I like metal and fuck you if you don't, and everything else sucks. And you start to get a little more well-rounded. It's that kind of pocket that also really interests me for everyone, because that's when you become the adult, right? That's when you start to realize that, okay, I'm a multifaceted creature. There's
right.
There's more to me than just this.
You're open to trying things and to discovering new parts of yourself, and you're not so locked into just being one thing. So you said you have a kid who's 20.
Well, she's 22.
Okay.
It burns my very soul to say that I my kids are 18 years apart.
Yeah.
That's like, come on.
Same mom or no?
No.
Okay. Yeah, but so for her, like, do you see that happening for her at that age, that she has gotten, is she kind of opening up to
Yes. Yes. And she's opening up to what I had
new
tried.
experiences, new music?
Yeah. Like the things that I tried to turn her on to 18 years ago, she's coming to on her own, but also showing me things. And I had always thought, as this music nerd, citizen of the world that I thought I'd been, she's showing me things now and coming to me with, what about this, Dad? Check this out. Shit I did to my father, the musician. That blew his mind as well. And that kind of dichotomy is it's beautiful and it's humbling and it makes me feel alive again. But there's something so magical about that time period. Your teens are great, sure, but those early 20s, right? When you're starting to really become adult, really come into your own, you're singling out, this is me. And it's a real thing. It's not just adhering to someone else's version of what you're supposed to be. You're really hashing it out for yourself. That's a beautiful time, especially I think for the feminine of the species, because men we're a little thicker, we're not as in touch. I think I didn't become an adult truly until I was about 34, 35, where the ladies 18 to 22, you're there already. We're way behind.
Nah, I wouldn't say that for myself.
Maybe ahead of the boys, but not in the womanhood.
You're still ahead of the boys for certain.
Maybe true.
And to see, this young woman that I had a hand in raising and, donating my genetics to, becoming this really incredible, well-rounded, very informed human being, and the music that influences that and the literature that influences that, it's just awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm so obsessed with that time period and the human evolution. So I guess I could posit this question to you, Adrienne, as we've left Charlie again. Well, that time period of your life, kind of dredge up the music.
Yeah. So my 20s, my college years were great because I was part of a really tightly knit scene of post-punk, hardcore, and garage, and we all really supported each other. And I got to see really cool bands like the Weird Lovemakers and the Fells, and they were friends of mine. And so we were running around doing that all the time. And at the same time that, all my friends, a lot of my friends were kind of on a steady diet of some variation of post-punk, I was also listening to stuff like Massive Attack and Muslim Gauze and Bjork, and also like the Zombies and Toots and the Maytals. And I was getting into hip hop because, at first we were all just listening to the Beastie Boys, and then we realized, oh my God, there's Diggable Planets, there's Far Side, there's Tribe Called Quest, there's all this cool stuff. So even though I was kind of in a certain scene, there was so much discovery going on. And I was also a really active artist at that time. A lot of painting. I painted murals with a friend of mine, Lisa, rest in peace. And we were constantly being each other's muse in terms of art, but also music, and just turning each other on to all these different types of styles. I turned her on to Ofra Haza from Turkey, and then we go see some crazy, like a Crash worship show at night. So it was a really exciting time because it was a time of discovery. And I mean, high school is a time of discovery, but a lot of kids are staying in their lane. In high school, I was listening to punk and goth and that kind of stuff. But yeah, once you get into high school and you start looking around and you see there's a world outside your high school and your family, and if you're music obsessed, it's just overwhelming because there's so much to discover. So I couldn't say that there's one band that did it all for me. I mean, I was obsessed with Sunny Day Real Estate, but again, I was also listening to Muslim Gauze all the time, which, not that many people know about, but
oh, I remember Muslim Gauze very well. Yes, very well. Very well.
Yeah, just, seeing like this, I guess he's an English guy, and, he has an album called Vote Hezbollah, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And I was like, this music is great, though. I'm going to put on some incense and throw a scarf over a lamp and have a great time.
Charlie, I remembered the name of the band that I was trying to summon. It's Bella Fleck and the Flecktones.
Oh, yeah. Bella Fleck.
Mm-hmm. Very, very foundational to a young me. My uncle turned me on to it when I think Bella was really starting to come into his own, as it were, like probably like 89, 88, 89. That's when I'd first heard of it. Bringing me to, I'd gotten to see the Grateful Dead with Jerry Garcia. I'd gotten to see The Who with the Clash opening with my dad and my uncle.
Dang. Lucky.
Yeah, that just old. Lucky doesn't really like come into play.
That's Lucky.
I'm old as fuck.
Like, Johnny Cash, and I know
I saw Johnny.
Okay.
I saw the Highwaymen. I saw the Highwaymen tour when it first happened, and it's just because I was, born at that point, and my grandfather was into it. But it's found
the Carter family. That was mind-boggling.
Really?
Yeah, and I was in high school, and he did the most punk rock version of Orange Blossom Special. The screen came down and it showed old movies of trains smashing into each other over and over again. And the song was going faster and faster. And my sister and I stood up and we were like screaming, and all these old people started shushing us. We were the only people that age in the entire place, but we're like just in awe of him. And I carried that ticket stub around in my wallet until about 8 years ago when I realized I'm going to destroy this. I need to put it in a box.
I'd gotten to see Johnny when he played in New York right before American Recordings came out. There was about 125 people in the whole club. I don't even remember the name of the club it was. There was Rick Rubin was there. I remember seeing him. He wasn't wearing shoes. It was mind-boggling to me at the time, right? So Rick Rubin's walking around with Johnny Cash, no shoes on. Chris Cornell was there. Had nothing to do with anything. He was just.
So what city were you in?
New York. It was New York City.
In New York. Okay.
This was the show though where Rick Rubin decided that the album was definitely going to happen. Apparently, I was smoking PCP that night.
Yikes!
I was a garbage head in the 90s. It was 91 or 92, so definitely very much a garbage head. But the show, Johnny was very out of favor at this point, right? There was no interest or love for country music outside of Garth Brooks and Chris Ledoux and all that stupidity that no one in their right mind likes. But this show had something else. There was a desperation to the delivery. Just a man, his acoustic guitar, a forgotten icon, the man who had once beaten the Beatles at their own game, just still reaching out to the youth. And you could tell that's what he was trying to do, reach out to
was he already doing a bunch of covers and kind of no, that was Rick Rubin did that. Okay.
That was Rick Rubin, and furthermore, it was Johnny's son. John
Huh.
Carter. John
Yeah,
Carter's the one
those
who told him, cover Nine Inch Nails, cover
yeah, oh my God.
Glenn
That
Danzig.
it those records made me both like fall in love with Johnny Cash because I had heard Johnny Cash before, but I was like, oh yeah, country stuff, what
Right.
I mean, cool, but those records just gave me this deep appreciation for him and his whole thing. And then also like were introductions to artists that I didn't have a connection to before, like Hurt, like, that Nine Inch Nails song, like Hurt.
Right.
That was never my genre. That was never my world. I never paid attention to what that song said until Johnny Cash sang it.
Yeah.
So those records were really cool.
The American Recordings string of albums, that second to none, actually, in my opinion. And I am a Sun Records nerd. I've been to Sun Records about a half a dozen times, even when it was a barbershop. Something about that Elvis, Roy Orbison, Johnny Cash, that whole era, I have an adoration for it. It is kind of like my first punk rock before I got into punk. He just got better with age.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people get to do that, get to age into glory.
Someone was just talking to me about, because David Crosby just died. Someone was just talking to me about, how David Crosby just got like better and better as he got older. And you know what? I had not listened to his most recent albums, and I started listening, and I was blown away.
Yeah.
He absolutely got better as he got older. And it's so nice to see that. It like gives us a little hope for ourselves too. Maybe it'll happen to us.
Sure, why not? There's no reason it couldn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? And a gentleman like David Crosby, who performed not only with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, but Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Neil Young was involved in the mix. Like, there's a Buffalo Springfield connection. There's that whole rich history of protest music and folk music and Americana all brewed into the mix. This man has written very large swaths of soundtrack to my specific life, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's infinite now. He passed away. He's gone, of course. But he's not dead. He's not gone. And there's something to be said about how ubiquitous his voice is. You know what I mean? He's never going to go away. He's never going to go away. And
just like Johnny Cash.
Just like Johnny Cash. And what's very, very cool about what you both are doing is you very well could be, and more than likely are, having a hand in what will be that 2 generations behind us. That's a pretty incredible idea that this, you're helping to curate the future soundtrack to people's lives.
I hope so. And even if it doesn't get that grandiose, even if we don't work with artists that come to be known at that level, I think to what Charlie and I are doing, it takes a certain kind of personality where you always want to help, you want to nurture, you want to see something good be recognized. And that's what's driven me to do pretty much everything is, obviously music and the way we share music and the experiences we have together seeing music live is otherworldly and incredible. And to just be able to play a part in it at whatever level is humbling, and it's fulfilling. Even if none of them get huge, as long as they get heard and as long as they're happy, as long as they're meeting milestones and progressing. So I think it's a real honor to be a part of that process. And also we work with artists, but I actually work with a lot of businesses. We work with businesses and nonprofits as well. And it's kind of similar in that, I work with, and I'm on the boards of a handful of really great organizations that support music and support artists. And to be able to help an organization do that kind of work is such an honor, especially because like an organization like the Sims Foundation, which is worth talking about because they're actually in the process of going national and possibly global. And they provide substance abuse treatment and mental health treatment to not just musicians, but people who work in the music industry. And that literally saves lives. I mean, I've spoken to so many people who have said that organizations saved their life. And I've been able to connect so many artists who are in crisis with this organization. And if you can be a part of something like that and help, like, why wouldn't you? So that's what drives me. And I know Charlie, it's probably the same for her, but you've got that whole artist aspect as well.
Yeah. I mean, Sims and Ham have both helped me personally. And I also want to do everything I can to give back to them. And so I've ended up being an artist spokesperson for both of those organizations. They're incredible.
And Ham is kind of the same thing, but for healthcare for Austin musicians. Great organization.
When you see these organizations like Music Cares being involved at the ground level with these artists who, as a musician, as a survivor of the opioid crisis, as it were, there are so many trappings that are kind of intertwined into the music industry. The fact that these organizations are in place, incredible. The fact that you can be involved on a very real level with something like that, amazing. Do you find that was kind of like more a thing of the past, or is it still just as present as it had been in the 90s, the 2000s? Because it seems to me that it's gotten worse, right?
More so, absolutely. I mean, you see the effects of social media and just, the world that we're living in right now. These are a lot of factors that are causing depression, on top of the fact that, our chosen industry, what drives that is alcohol sales.
Yeah.
And there's just so many factors at play that are really making it challenging for people who are working and creating within this realm to stay balanced. And that's a challenge. And on top of that, there's also the aspect of, equity, diversity. There's just a million things that we can do. Like, one of my favorite sayings for myself is, I can't change the world, but we can change the world, our world, the music world. And working with these organizations like EQ Austin, which works for, equity and better representation of, genres and BIPOC artists. That's so important in this day and age. Just like Ham and Sims, what we're striving for is to create a healthy community and to feel that we're doing our part by supporting these organizations and supporting these artists is what makes this work so incredibly fulfilling. And that, and the autonomy on top of it, that we get to pick who we work with, is great too. That's good for our mental well-being.
Well, yeah, because in all honesty, no one's forcing your hand to be like, okay, we're working this right now. You're getting to kind of cherry pick who you want to work with. It's not kind of driven by the corporate machine for you anymore.
No, we're the business owners.
Yeah, that's
we're the boss.
That's refreshing because
tiny little corporate machine.
Well, it's not. There's nothing corporate about it.
No,
really.
There's not. And it's because of what we're trying to do, and build it from the bottom up, and because we're trying to achieve these goals of health, equity, all these important things that drive us.
So if I could kind of like rein something in, I don't have like a strict format, but I do have one question that I ask everyone that comes on my show. And I understand that it can be tedious to people, but kind of the thrust of the show is to ask people involved in the music industry, artists, whatnot, what is it that terrifies you on an existential level? Because in my opinion, existential terror is what drives creativity. Just based on myself, really, because that's what made me a creative. What I was terrified of, that inspired, the that creative drive, right? So I always posit this question to my guests. So if it's not too tedious of a
I don't think of it as tedious, but I think it does get personal.
It does get personal.
Yeah.
So you can strip away as many personal aspects of it as possible. But if you'd care to broach that specific topic, I would be appreciative.
Adrienne, what?
Damn it. Damn you, Charlie.
Take this first.
All right, fine. Honestly, I hate to say this because, I don't want to bring things on to a depressing level, but, we're seeing kind of a lot of what existentially has terrified me, the things we're seeing during the Trump era. And granted, we have to remind ourselves that, with all this turmoil, there are steps forward. A lot of great things have happened recently in terms of equity, which is great. It's always going to be awkward when we are little babies and we're learning how to do things right, and it's going to be sloppy, and then hopefully, down the line, it's not going to be so awkward and it's not going to be so sloppy, and we can look back and say we've made real progress. But yeah, the existential horror of the Trump era that we've been living in, and the pandemic, I feel like that's something that a lot of people would have, a lot of extreme germaphobes probably were terrified of, and it happened. And in the beginning, it was absolutely terrifying because it seemed so difficult to be safe. We've learned a lot coming through this. We're still learning. But to what level will COVID ever go away? We don't know at
Probably
this point.
Not.
And that is a little scary, not knowing, just the not knowing if we'll ever be rid of this, or the horrors of Donald J. Trump.
Well, I mean, I've despised that man since the 80s. Despised.
Oh yeah. He's been mocked on SNL for decades.
Yeah, it's nothing new. But the fact that the biggest xenophobe, he's not just xenophobic, he actually hates women. This man hates.
Oh, he hates women. A lot of people, and to me, this veritable antichrist who rises up and gets the homophobic, the bigoted, all these people are just riled up, and they see the president doing and saying these things, and now they're storming the Capitol.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the Orwellian nightmare come to life.
Absolutely. I mean, just from my own personal perspective, married to a woman of color with a mixed race son, and my brother closest to me in age behind me, I'm the oldest, who's a homosexual. And I have all these people that I feel I need to kind of be like, I can't really protect anyone truly, but I feel like I have to kind of be the leading the charge to be the buffer between them, because I'm the eldest of the tribe. I'm the husband, the father, the oldest brother. Like, I just kind of want to swing in all directions, get the fuck away from my people. That. And these evil fucks they're running the show.
Yeah, it's terrifying because, you know, I work with queer artists and I work with artists of color. It's particularly scary right now for my queer artists because like one of the artists that I manage, which I said I was never going to manage any artist, but Caleb DeCasper is that good. Here we are. I'm managing him. He's an incredible performer. They're trying to introduce legislation here that will basically criminalize venues and artists for performing if there are children in the audience, if they are wearing the clothes of the gender they were not assigned at birth. And Caleb, like, you know, many other artists I know, wears whatever he damn well wants, and sometimes that's a gown, and it's often heels and makeup. And you know, we've had to worry about these things because Caleb had a day named after him. By the way, Charlie Faye has a day too. There's Austin Charlie Faye Day, and there's Caleb DeCasper Day. And on Caleb DeCasper Day, he had a picture taken with Representative Chico Vela, which he tweeted, and all of the trolls came out to tell them both how horrible they were. And this was right before the record release. And it was fine because those people are big cowards, you know, they're just losers hiding behind their computers.
Yeah.
But, you know, these are the things that are part of my job now, is to try to combat this stuff. And, you know, and I have to go and talk to the venue and say, hey, be on the lookout for this. And, you know, we just found out that there's some guy who's trying to get into drag shows here. And he's some right-wing lunatic. And, you know, this is the world we live in right now. And granted, there's been so much progress, though, because, you know, Lil Nas X wouldn't have been where he is, except we're in a time where a lot of people are really embracing queer culture and queer artists.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing. And like I said, I feel like it's growing pains, you know, and it's riling up these people who are afraid to lose their place at the top. They are afraid to respect everybody, no matter what they look like and what they dress like and who they love.
Don't you think it's a little strange, though, that, you know, in 1993, Kurt Cobain was on stage, even though everyone knew he was a heterosexual male married to Courtney Love with Frances Bean as a child, dressed in, he was in a dress. Okay.
Well, nothing was a big deal back then. Now everything's a big
rock. You know, that's like a punk rock middle finger. Look at me, I'm wearing a dress, but he still had stubble, and he's still wearing, you know, Doc Martens, and he wasn't trying to dress in drag or, you know, trying to be a woman. He's just being a punk rock dude in a dress.
Yeah. I can see that. Then it's just, you know,
Daydre did that too.
how is it, to me, how is it really that different? How can you view it any differently other than, okay, this is a statement. Okay, this is a way of life. This is this is that. How does that challenge me? Because I never took any of this shit as, it doesn't challenge me. It doesn't make me feel.
If you are confident in who you are, then what other people do should not be a threat to you. You should not care what other people dress like, or who they love, or who they make out with, or if this is insecurity.
It is. It's if seeing that might make me want to do that too, but I don't really want to do that. So I don't want to see it. And I'd like it to not exist, you know?
It's a closeted tendency, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah.
If you're not
Absolutely.
if you're not totally okay with what other people are doing behind closed doors, you have something to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Just
the
my
lady
opinion.
dog protest too much.
Thank you, William Shakespeare.
Yes,
Mm,
it applies.
it does apply.
Yeah, so I
uh,
guess that was a long answer to your question, and I don't want to make a statement like that, which is such a downer, and say that I'm not hopeful, because I do believe that, you know, this is growing pains, and I would like to think in a decade or two we will look back and just like pity the poor souls that were on the wrong side of history, and be able to go forward from there, because there are a lot of good things happening right now, and it's important to remember that.
Yeah.
Charlie, your turn.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make mine short because I'm way past my bedtime. I mean, I think probably mine are loss of self and waste of life. Like, I don't want to lose myself, you know, and part of that is I don't want to waste my experience of life, my unique experience of life. I don't want to waste it. I want to, yeah.
The number one answer on this show to this question has been a loss of self. Number one answer.
That's
Wow,
interesting. It's such an artisty answer.
it is.
You know what it
Must maintain self. This is me.
well,
Once
no,
you write
what
in your
what it,
journal about it.
what it is truly is like the self is that's consciousness, it's existence, it's your life experiences, like losing all of that. My answer is ridiculous. Like to me, that's a very realistic answer. You know, what are you afraid of? Losing myself makes total sense. Adrienne, your answer makes total sense. Mine doesn't.
What's okay? What's yours?
Uh,
Now you're going to tell us.
Just
oh,
say
I'm
it.
going.
Discuss it for too long.
I have no objection with telling you. When I was a very small child, 4 years old, I used to watch on PBS a show called Nova.
Yes,
Okay, it was about the universe, you know, at large.
it's still around,
And
isn't it?
yes, it is.
Yeah.
And they posited the idea that outside of the known lighted universe, when all of the galaxies have been broached, there is a vast ocean, an expanse of nothingness. That nothingness.
That is terrifying.
The nothingness and the
Have you seen the Never-Ending Story? I'm sure you
Oh,
do.
of course. That's part of my
The
childhood.
nothing. The nothing.
But
It's real.
when you take a very neurotic 4-year-old with an IQ that is capable of quantifying the idea that nothing can be eternal, coming from a Catholic background, expounding upon the ideas of hell and Dante's Inferno, and it just starts to become this cyclical nightmare of the nothing, the nothing, the nothing. You're fucked. Fucked, motherfucker. It's over. And that still keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
And
On
it
that
makes
note,
no sense, and I have nothing to worry about because it's never going to happen. I'll never see it. It doesn't make sense, but it's there, and it's not going away. Me in a nutshell. Welcome to me.
I used to think about that stuff when I was a little kid, but there was something that just like popped into my brain, like, you are going to make your brain hurt if you keep thinking about this. Shut it off now. Go get records.
Mine was always, the truth is there. You got to go. It's not black enough. Go blacker. It's not dark enough. Go darker. Go find it. The demon, the devils, the details are there. You need to find out. You need to know. You need to know. Go deeper. Go darker. You know what you find? The more you stare into the abyss, the more the abyss stares back at you. The end. You're a dick, Pete. But listen, I've taken up enough of your time. I am very, very excited for what you are going to accomplish in the future. This is such an incredible venture. I wish I had the wherewithal to have done what you two have done.
You can do it. There's artists and businesses that need help everywhere.
Yeah, the help I can give
naturally to you, then no, don't do it. But
no, the help I can give is talking a bunch of shit to them and recording it and putting it back into the ether. And if that helps, great. If not, at least it's entertaining to us.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a lot of fun for me anyway.
Good.
It's been fun for us.
I'm glad you appreciate it. It's not a traditional podcast by any stretch of the imagination, talking to this, semi-autistic whack job from Scranton, Pennsylvania, which I have issues. But
you are doing great.
I try to do great, and my intention is to do positive things. So positive things occur. That's the way I see the universe. But I really love what you're doing. I hope it bears great dividends for you. And I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for coming
for
on.
Another 10 hours.
This is nothing.
Maybe earlier in the day next time.
I'm sorry. I have a 3-year-old running around. I chisel out where I can.
I do too.
I know you get it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Charlie's hours are not rock and roll. And she's gone.
Yeah, she was like, fuck
she's
these.
She's probably giving me the finger right now.
She very nice, very nice.
No, she's the best. I got so lucky that she reached out to me. Everything has just been so easy, and we always know when to lean on each other and when to help each other. It's so symbiotic.
Well, folks, thus concludes another chapter in the book of very, very bad things. Adrienne and Charlie are fantastic. I love what they're doing for music. I loved our conversation. There is more to this conversation that happened between Adrienne and I. I'm going to go through that and make it its own episode because I believe our conversation is that worthwhile. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Until then, they've been Adrienne and Charlie of Daydream Believer. I've been Peter. You've been beautiful. And this has been the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. Take care of each other, everyone. Good night.
Sways along to the tune of your name as you plot
If the music you've heard this evening is of any interest to you whatsoever, that was my band Heart Out. Every rock-based song included in this episode tonight is from our album, The Thirst. The band is called Heart Out. The Thirst is the record. Streaming everywhere. You can listen to music.